You can carry water in it.
미국에서 에너지를 판매하는 기업 중 컨스텔레이션이라는 기업에서 에너지를 사고 싶다면 반드시 이분을 거쳐야 하는데요. 컨스텔레이션의 부사장 앤드류 싱어를 직접 만나 이야기를 나눠보았습니다. So I'm very excited about this. So can you share briefly about your personal journey to Constellation?
I'm originally from New York, where a friend of mine introduced me to somebody that worked for a company called New Energy Ventures. I was working at the time as a salesperson for a lighting company. So I had a law degree, I had a kid on the way, and I was doing sales because I really could not figure out what I was doing. And through basically complete act of God, I ended up getting a job at this company. They told me that I had 3 months to sell $1 million worth of electricity at the time, as they defined it. And that was 25 and a half years ago. And that's how I started at the company. And I started as a salesperson, and I was selling in California. I was selling power to companies, but I was going to large buildings, industrials, etc. I ended up becoming a manager in the company. I did some IT projects, and they ended up becoming acquired at one point by Constellation, a company in Baltimore. And they asked me if I would move to Baltimore to start something called a national sales program, which was to put together all of our largest customers into one group. So I said, sure. I built up a national sales program, and it's a wonderful business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. I'm part of a large corporation, hopefully at one point to again become a Fortune 100 corporation. Currently, I'm responsible for almost the entire country, and we cover the entire country selling electricity. We have another division that sells gas competitively. We sell solar power, wind power, which we call sustainable power, clean power. It's the forefront of the news all the time.
Now, why sales? I mean, were you born and raised as a salesperson? What is your understanding of sales, and how would you help people or encourage people to change their lives in a different level with the technique of sales?
It's a very big question. On a personal human level, the idea of selling can be defined as your personal acceptance in a given group or by another person. So somebody will say you're selling yourself every day, if you will. But then you would argue, well, this person officially seems introverted and maybe they're not as open. However, there are people that love them. There are people that will love them. Now, depending what people do, they will or won't give themselves credit for being in a sales type of position. So there are people that do analysis. There are people that trade stocks. There are people that manufacture things. So they wouldn't consider themselves on a daily basis being in quote unquote professional sales. And what they don't realize is that there is always a process of acceptance, if you will. Sales has a level of acceptance within it and a level of giving things over to someone and having them accept it as well. It's a mutually accepting type thing. People that are successful do have similar personality traits. They have similar understandings, etc. Very successful salespeople are students of the human psyche, or they understand people. They'll be able to read a person, as you had brought up the MMBTI, DISC, understanding whether somebody is more of a gestalt, high level, a whole thinker. So to that extent, sales is a learned profession as well. Should people feel comfortable speaking to other people? That's usually helpful. Does the loudest kid in class necessarily have to be a politician, a lawyer, or a salesperson? Not necessarily, no. There are very successful engineers who learn how to think well, present well, and speak well that could be very successful salespeople. But in a professional setting, the ability to keep your mouth shut is a skill. The ability to nod and to encourage others to speak. So in the sales business, when you're closing a deal, you always want your customer or your prospect, what we say, to close themselves. You want to encourage them to almost say out loud why they like the product. It's not a trick. Is there a technique to it? Yes, it's not a bad technique. It's one of the sales training that I always loved over the years is something called Sandler selling. I'm not advertising. I don't get any money for anything. And he has since passed away a long time ago, but I listened to his original tapes. When I got into sales, an older person that was in the company, he handed me a box of cassette tapes. And he said that a great salesperson is a psychologist directing a Broadway play. Why a psychologist? They understand the human psyche, human behavior. Why a director? Nothing happens in a sales situation that a salesperson doesn't want to happen. And why a Broadway play? Because everything that's placed and done, from the charts, your computer, everything that's happening, even the people you bring to your meeting, that's all part of a play, not a fake show, but what you've put together to create the ultimate experience so that you can help your customer, prospect, person that you're speaking to want to find out more about your product and potentially want to buy the product. I think the final thing is, and this is the toughest thing because salespeople have very big egos, very strong identity. It's not just the listening, but it's giving over the control at any given time to somebody else. Although you're in control, you're in silent control. You're in almost a mind type control. And to the extent where you may want to say something, but you control yourself and don't. You may want to push somebody aside, but you do it in a different way. Someone else will start talking and you might want to say, your goal is to sell the best product for your customer. And if it's not right, you should be able to walk away as well and thank them. And you always want what's best for them. That has a lot of self-control involved, a lot of understanding, etc. Your technique and your process should allow you to find the best possible, I'll call them prospects, potential customers. You're always looking for the best potential customer. No product sells itself. No product is easy to sell. If it is easy, then you have millions of people you're competing with. And if it's hard, you have fewer people that you're competing with. But let's say the negative side. Let's say you find nobody's really interested in your product. You have to then ask, is it being presented the right way? Is it helpful? As a dumb example, let's say you have a bucket that you put water into that we know. Suppose the person who invented the bucket as a way to step up a foot higher to pick an apple from a tree. And you go out and you're trying to sell this to people and they're saying, well, I have a rock that I get on, or I have a little small ladder, I don't need this. And then by accident one day, somebody sees in the rainstorm that all the water gathers in this bucket. They're like, wow, you can carry water in it. And suddenly you're selling something that carries water and everybody wants to buy it. But let's say you have a product that nobody wants it. Maybe you came up with something that was really helpful to you, but nobody else is interested. At some point, you have to know when to move on, or you have to know maybe the audience is different. There are a lot of different factors involved in determining whether something really is useful, can be successful, and what the challenge is if it's not being successful.
How do you distinguish between sales and marketing?
I think the best way I could define it is marketing has both art and science involved. The science is understanding the population at large where you want to sell your product. They have an understanding of the types of businesses, types of people, and then they go after it scientifically and mathematically to think about where these people or companies are, what they look like, how they act, similar to selling, but it's almost has a mass appeal to it with lots of data coming in, being crunched and looked at. The salesperson is acting off of all of that information and the product itself and going back out to the market and looking at things on an individual or a company-wide basis to go attack, if you will, opened up by those marketing efforts. So there's a lot of similarities as well as some differences as well. When sales and marketing work well together, it's an amazing symphony. It's a wonderful thing. When they're kind of at odds, or if they're not seeing things together, you can see disjointedness in market approach and what's happening. So it's a very important thing to have that understood within a company structure, or even in your own business, to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.